Is Casey Maxwell with Art of Divine Touch. So this video today is a little bit about my personal story and my personal experiences that have taken me down this spiritual path and what it means to me being a psychic medium, some of the things I've experienced when I was young and how it has evolved, and how this insight can help many of you that have had similar experiences and are on a similar path. So for me, when I was young, before I was conditioned or I had parents to tell me something specific, or before I had politics and the teachers and religion to tell me something specific, some of my first memories of a child was still this knowing of this body-soul oneness and this feeling of eternal life and being able to experience and explore without judgment or expectation. There was just a simple peace about this way of being. And when I was 4 years old, I have, in that time, grown a lot. I had witnessed two of my grandfathers pass, and the emotional effect that was taking on my family, the people around me, my mother and my grandmother on one side, and my aunt and the family, and then the dramatic kind of loss and experience that I went through in even more detail with my other grandfather on my dad's side. He was a pastor and a beautifully strong person, and he did experience much in his life with his closeness to God and this oneness that he was experiencing and how he was able to teach others. He was the pastor of a Pentecostal church, and in that time frame and in that era, so to speak, it was very strict culture, and there was a lot of experience and talk about the love of God, but also the fear of God. And a huge part of my soul had started to feel controversy within the family and within the teachings and the practice and within the preaching over a period of time after he had passed. And I have witnessed both so many beautiful things within different cultures and within religious experience, and an equal amount of fear and doubt and confusion. But when I was 4 years old, before any of that could take a turn, after my papa had passed, I remember waking up at about 6 o'clock, 5:30 in the morning, and I was staying at my granny's house. And I was in the guest bedroom, and I was still fairly young, but at this point in time in her life with him passing, she was not comfortable having anyone sleep next to her or near her. And it took her quite a long time to get through that emotional feeling. And she had her best friend staying with her to keep her company and help her process. So I was staying in the guest room with her. And about that 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning, I woke up out of a dead sleep, and I walked down the hallway, and I stepped into that threshold of my grandmother's door, the doorway, but I never walked through. And I remember looking up, and her bed was placed where there was a window behind it, and the light was shining through these white curtains. And the window was not open, but it was almost like a breeze came through, and these white curtains were moving, and the light from the window and the curtains manifested and evolved into this ethereal being that was standing over top of her. And it was the ability to see stars among stars among stars of the purest glitter and light you have ever seen, floating there, taking up space. And when I was experiencing this, I get excited about it now, but in the moment, at that age, there was a knowing. I remember thinking about how humble and how confident I was, and how I wasn't necessarily overjoyed or shocked or scared. It was a communication through consciousness of different beings in that moment. And she was standing over top of my grandmother, and looking down upon her. And as I'm standing there, I remember the feeling of that consciousness, that presence, acknowledging me, and this telepathic experience happening. And even though there was no distinct face, and it was this shape of this body, but more of rounded blob, just this glitter dust floating there, this being, this angelic being, this spirit, this extraterrestrial being, whatever you want to call it, was present with me. This guardian was present with me and acknowledged me in that moment. And there was this feeling of change taking place, and my ability to make the decision, my soul to make the decision to go to this creature, and almost that knowing of going back to source, or not going to the creature and staying where I was. And there was a decision in my heart that I recognized years later, that feeling when it came back to me at moments in my life, I would think that I had made that decision to be present with my grandmother, to not go back to source. And all of this change was taking place, and for years I contemplated if that was my grandfather's spirit coming back down and was watching over her. And a part of me feels like it was initiated in that way, but that it was more a different being. And without getting too much in more detail about that specific story, I experienced this being, I felt this being, and I turned around, I went back to sleep, I woke up with everybody else 2 hours later, and went about my day as a 4-year-old, forgetting many more things after that, but having specific memories of these experiences over time. So my grandfather that had passed, my grandmother's husband, he was always with me, is always with me. And I didn't want to acknowledge him being there, because as I was conditioned and as I learned about things within the Pentecostal religion, and even in my mother's religion, which was Lutheran, I experienced a lot of fear and a lot of doubt of myself for many years. And I would go through waves of spiritual enlightenment. And when I turned 11 years old, that was one of those heightening phases and transformations for me within my soul. I was recognizing spirit in such a deeper way. I was witnessing miracles. I was seeing people healed. I was getting through own fears in my life that were karmic, that were through past life experiences that at the time I wasn't aware of, but a part of my soul knew. But to be able to communicate that with the people that were around me, it was always based on there being this demon or this possession. And not to deny that, but the other half of the awareness, the other half of that spiritual knowledge was not shared. And it was so fear-based, it continued to leave me in a place of fear. And during that time when I was 11 years old, I was starting to have my first premonitions that I can remember, outside of experiencing seeing ethereal beings and then not being able to see them physically, and then get into a place of this conditioning, this cultural change, and then to turn 11 years old. And a lot of the visions I had when I was 11 were not confirmed until about 6 to 5 years just recently. I started to make these connections where I would experience little things, and I knew that I was having premonitions, but there was no answer or connection. And I was seeing this time frame of how now, being where I am, it seems like it was not that long ago, and then it was seeming like it was taking forever to make the connections. And then once again got into this conditioning and a distraction of school and school starting and needing to keep up with appearance and tapping into my friends' emotional well-being and this instability of kind of negative energies, lower vibrational energies that get a hold of innocent children. Remembering in it what that felt like, what that experience was like, and not just tapping into it in my own way, but experiencing it through other people more so, and being empathetic and not being able to discern between those emotions, and then also feeling this strict need to follow the rules, to follow that conditioning, and to not talk about specific things because I was either mental or possessed. And I got to a place where I got rebellious, I got angry, I was confused with the world, I didn't understand. And I was watching my family go through pain and turmoil of dealing with loss and dealing with divorce and dealing with financial instability. Like most people experience all this confusion, making it hard for me to connect with anybody and to understand what was happening in my journey. But it also made me so much stronger to have that deeper connection and awareness now, because without being taught by those people, I stayed true through points and times in my life, listening to my inner well-being, my inner soul, my higher self, my guardians, my angels, and source, listening to source and spirit. And when I got to about 14, 15 years old, going through this next 7-year type of jump, from 14 to 16, I started really working with astral projection before I even knew what that was. And this whole time period of me being 4, going into this 15-year-old experience, outer body experiences, I was always working with and interested with herbal medicine and witchcraft and spells that were like blessings and wanting to heal people. And a huge part of that was subdued because of that religious conditioning. And it caused a lot more rebellion in me. But then over a period of time, I was able to make these karmic and past life connections, which I'll share more on later. And with these outer body experiences, I started to go through sleep paralysis and experience lower vibrational energies in a fearful way while outer body, but also in an enlightening way, as I was able to gain more control of the experience and differentiate between lucid dreaming and astral projection and remote viewing, and these things that I didn't have terminology for at the time. For more of my astral projection experience and on remote viewing, I have my experience with astral projection video from a few days ago, earlier this week, that you can tune into, as well as an astral projection and the differences of remote viewing. And through that experience of my soul kind of opening and awakening and pushing myself to journey in this way, there was a part of me that just started to know that I was different, that always knew, and we all know that we are different in some way, but how my soul communicated with other dimensions and with other beings that a lot of people would ignore, wouldn't speak about, had fear about, or just no knowledge of. And how there was this time and a place for me to come out and share these things. And within the last 7 years of leaving my homeland and moving to a new location and getting out of that experience, leaving college, leaving everything that I thought I should be doing, to finally explore the depths of everything that I naturally always knew, brought me to a deeper connection of body-soul oneness and expanded all of me. I was so sheltered then. I didn't know that yoga was a practice. I didn't know about astral projection in detail or other cultural experiences or deep meditation or how to get to these trance places. I was just doing these things and was afraid that I was doing something wrong for a really long time until I decided that it just wasn't worth listening to everybody else anymore tell me that this is the way I should be, and to go back to trusting my instinct and my intuition and the beings that were with me. And it came full circle, back around later, to not ignoring my grandfather's spirit being there anymore. I was always worried of his judgment after he had passed, that it added a huge part of fear of me being who I was, because a lot of what he preached about and a lot of what my family continued to share and carry over still brought up a lot of doubt in me and questioning. And when I finally decided not to ignore that he was there any longer, and do better things for myself and work through this judgment of myself through that conditioning and that experience, I was able to heal and let go and close certain doorways and mend wounds and nurture the scars and allow all of these bigger doorways and these bigger windows to open before me. It wasn't till a few years ago, about a year or so ago, that one of my best friends lost her 2-year-old nephew to an accident with the babysitter, which I'm not going to go into detail about. But long story short, this young child at some point had come to me, and I was tapping into spirits before, and I was sharing with some people, and I had my clients with the specific holistic and healing modalities that I was doing within that last 6 to 7 year period. But there were only specific clients and specific friends and specific family members that I could still communicate about these things with in a certain way. And it wasn't until even more recently that I got to a place where I wasn't truly still being my authentic self if I wasn't comfortable sharing all of it with everybody. And my best friend's nephew spirit had passed on for his next journey, and they had asked me to do a memorial painting. And growing up, art was my outlet, it was my expression, it was my go-to, and also the expectation of what I would be doing in the future, because that was the only thing that worked for me. And I was a painting major in college when I had left and just felt that I needed something more. But over that 6-7 year period, I started to get back into my art in a deeper way, connecting with my visions, connecting with the essence of people's souls through the paintings and the way their eyes connect. And this was the first time I had ever been asked to paint a memorial piece for a young child or a spirit that had passed on it all. And it opened up that next level, that next gateway. And I got so much clarity. And it was about a month or two later that I was sitting on my couch, and I went to kind of lean into the couch and half lay down onto the cushion, that I was aware that this little boy was sitting next to me. And as I was falling into the couch, his hands were opening up, and I knew exactly what he was wearing. And it was more than just a knowing at this point. It was a vibrant, real experience, communication with a conscious being. And this is a being that lived in another state, and I had never met this young boy, only seen pictures and only heard stories through the connection of my friend. And upon painting this picture, and that's when I realized that this evolution of the art, the expression of my soul in this reality, was going even deeper with the soul connection and the oneness that I was experiencing with Source and ethereal beings in the angelic realm and extraterrestrial beings. And it has taken off since there and left me with the ability to help people connect with loved ones on the other side, to go and have these guided outer body experiences where I can psychically and visually journey with them and come back in time and draw it and be able to show them I saw exactly what they saw, or to have dreams or premonitions the night before and to meet people later or to go and share that experience with them, which is another video I'm going to love to share with you here in a few days. Is a client that I recently got that ended up being a soul sister, a star origin, a deep connection to my heart. And I had dreams about her days before I had met her and was able to draw her in my vision sketchbook before even meeting her, and then showing it to her later, as well as going into trance with her and doing these guided vision quests, and then being able to draw them later and share that experience with her. And I'm hoping and praying that we will be making a video together soon to share that experience with you, to bring inspiration and enlightenment to deeper psychic connections and soul origins and soul family. I have so many more stories I want to share about this and experiences that I have enjoyed over the span of my lifetime so far, and has brought me to a deeper place, a deeper bliss, and this trust, this knowing to just be my authentic self, to share it with you guys, and to inspire others to continue to also be their authentic self. With that, thank you guys so much for tuning in. Please subscribe, like, follow up, tune into what I've got going on. I'm going to continue to share more stories later.